Hey, trendsetters, it's your girl Heidi, and I'm sitting down with this dynamic dude. Oh my God, you guys are going to be so mind blown after he tells you his story. He's a best-selling author. I gotta look at the book, right? Freeing Self, IFS Beyond the Therapy Room. You guys gotta get it. He sent me an insert. I watched his videos. He's a personal development coach. He's doing youth services, men's mental health, a whole the Well-Dressed Academy. I mean, it's a whole. This dude come with a whole host of stuff. Before I even talk and mess anything up, let me get this guy on so he can talk and tell his story for himself. Welcome, Ty Cutner. Welcome,
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to
Yes,
have
happy to
you.
be here.
Glad to
Yes.
have you. I'm glad to have you. You know, um, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Phil. Hey, Phil. And he was so impressed by you as an individual. And, you know, that struck a chord with me because anybody who knows Phil knows that he's not that easy to be impressed. And you were really impressionable on him as a man. And you know, I jumped on the opportunity on reaching out to you and getting to know you and hearing your story. And I too, I'm very, very, I went on your website. I dug, you asked me to. So I said, you know what? Must be a reason. Let me, and I don't normally do. I let, most of the people I already have a relationship with, but for some reason something stuck out with me and I did, some digging. And I was even more impressed with you. And I was glad to ask you to come on for you to tell your story. So let me step back and let me pass this baton to you. Ty Cutner, tell your story.
Yes. Okay. So I'll start a little bit by how I met Phil. So I
Mhm.
was in the shop, right, with my girl. And then Phil was like, "Who's this guy?" So I'm a well-dressed man all the time, I have my shades and all that stuff. I'm hanging out with my girl. And he bumped into me. He's like, asked me who I am, what do I do? And these days I just go straight to the point of what I do. I introduce myself as Ty Cutner, and I'm on a mission to heal the world. In 10 to 15 years, I'm in all wars, racism, crime. I'm gonna end it all by spreading this psychotherapy model that I'm training in internal family systems. Right. So that's what IFS is.
Mhm.
And so my life start I've been able to track my life, the dots back in my life all the way back to my birth. So this mission that I'm on is the mission I was destined to be on. My life started with trauma. My father was killed before I was born. Right. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My mom poured into me that I was the best kid, talented, gifted, funny, golden child of the family, but she passed away when I was 15 in the 10th grade. And when I lost my mom, I lost a part of me. She was the most important person to me by far. So when I lost her, it was almost like a color just evaporated from the world, and it was a different place. Fast forward 20 something years, and there was one IFS session that allowed me to retrieve that part that I lost when my mom passed. And it blew my mind. One
Mhm.
session, not years and years of therapy. How come the whole world doesn't realize our mind works this way? Right? Why is this thing stuck in therapy? Give it to everybody for free. Like give it to all of us like you gave math to us. Right? And so it's very difficult to get trained in IFS because very high demand. It's tens of thousands of therapists on a wait list to be trained. It's like close to $5,000 you have to pay to get trained, right? And so it's difficult for someone to get trained in the model. But because of my connections and divine intervention, I got trained 3 times in a matter of 18 months. And because
Wow.
I was coaching men who were going through divorce, separation, and cheating. We'll get into that at some point. I had a whole audience of people to work with. So I got real good real fast. And so now I'm seen as a prodigy in the model. And so I
Mhm.
put it in everything from my image coaching workshops, my parent workshops, and now I'm here to give it to the world.
Wow. Talk to us about what growing up. You mentioned that you're from Brooklyn. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Brooklyn, shout out Brooklyn. Um, Talk to us about growing up and in Brooklyn with your mom up until the point where you lost your mom and then the changes in your life that led us here. How,
Mhm.
we going to talk in parts, right? So growing up, and then we're going to talk about your mom a little bit and how she impressed you to this degree that now we have this individual.
Right, right, yeah. So I was always a happy kid, always funny, very social. I was always inquisitive. I was the first boy of the family, so there wasn't really many kids around in the beginning. So I was around a lot of adults. So I would observe a lot. I would be quiet and I would just pay attention. And I was good at making impressions on people, like as far as impersonations. I was pretty funny making different sounds and all that, and so joking. Adults love being around me. Adults love to hang out with me. I just have so many stories of just having fun with the adults. And so my mom was able to see me. She was able to see parts of me, and she would call it out. She would call out some of my gifts and my talents. And you see how Tyrone? She would like, she would brag about me when she didn't think I was listening because she didn't want me to get a big head, right? You see how Tyrone was able to do that so fast? I see, but I was so observant. I will be hearing her, like, act like I'm listening, looking at TV, but I'm listening, right? And so because she pointed those things out in me, I was able to give my talents out to the world. So I realized it wasn't just one of me, it was a multiplicity of me. I was good at this, but also good at that. I can do that, and I can also do these things. And so it was my mom. She had me when I was 19, and my family structure was my mom and my father's family. Now my father's family were there, had a bunch of aunts and a grandmother, and then I had my grandfather, right, my mother's father, and my mother's father is the one who took care of me, and my grandpa, I call him grandpa. He took care of me from like fifth grade, put me through school. And I lived with him in Brooklyn. My mom moved to the Bronx, and so I would be back and forth, with those individuals. And when I was at my grandfather's house, and my grandfather was him and I in a three-bedroom townhouse, right? And when I was with him, I couldn't be that. We would do all the dancing, all that stuff. Him, sit down. Hold on there, relax yourself, man. I couldn't be a kid with him around. So then when he was there, I would be quiet, more introverted. I would like take things apart. That's when those intellectual parts of me really get activated at my grandfather's house. Because in my mom's house, more my social, funny, comedian parts will be coming out during that time. And so at some point, my mom she had her stuff going on with her traumas and things like that in the 80s, drugs and all that. And so she was battling some drug addictions. I couldn't really see it. She wasn't like bad to the point where it could show on her, but that was happening. And so my grandfather had custody of me from some time. And then my mom got custody of me back when I was 9. And then when I was around 12, 13, she started to get sick. Now, at first, I didn't realize why she was getting sick. But at some point, I had to step up as more of the adult in the house at a younger age. The traumas came around that, me being that. And there's a lot of us going through that. I know a lot of us in the 80s who grew up in the 80s, our grandparents were very instrumental in raising us because
Yep.
of the epidemics that was happening in our society. And so when my mom passed, my grandfather stepped in again. He was always around, but he stepped in again and took custody of my sister and I until, I became an adult.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, how was it for you at 15 losing your mom? I mean, you did say that she was sick and her health started to decline and you had to step up now as an adult. You her son,
Mhm.
So how was that for you?
It was tough. It was like life, my childhood was cut short. I wasn't able to always be funny and play. I had to have responsibility that was beyond myself earlier than I would have wanted to. I had to take care of the house in certain ways. I had to make sure there was food in the house. I couldn't go to school sometimes because, certain things would happen. She would, end up in the hospital, and then, I take care of my sister for some time. And so it was like a lot of things like that kept happening. And I was such a proud kid. I was always considered cool. I was always like, well dressed and but for that age. And I was real proud, and I didn't want anyone outside of my house to know what was really happening in the house. So then I had to keep the outside world away from the traumas and things that I maybe had been experiencing in the house. And even my grandfather, I didn't want to share certain things with him too, because parts of me were afraid that he would come in and take her away from me, take us away from her, because that fear of him having custody of me and not being with her. So I would keep some of that to myself as well. And when she passed, it was like I lost a huge, I didn't have a sadness in my life. But when she passed, it was an infinite sadness. It was a
Mm,
sadness I couldn't shake, right? I never felt that before because anything that I went through in life, whatever I failed a test, like that was the worst thing. I failed a test or like something silly like that, right? That was the worst thing that could ever happened to me. But losing my mom, it was something that couldn't be repaired. Like it couldn't be reversed. And I was like, I was so in denial because I was like, um, Tyrone, I'm like the best thing. Like I'm invisible. How can this be happening to me? How can this be
mm,
happening to my family, to my mom? And so I got better grades, did better in school, became funnier because that was a way for me to escape. School was a way for me to escape from home life. And so I got perfect attendance, and all that stuff happened. But it was very hard to shake, and then life just kind of went on for myself. I tried to get past it. Life went on for everybody else around me. So like we're just gonna move on from this, I guess,
so it was like living a double life
in a
to a
sense,
certain
yeah.
degree,
Hmm.
right? Wow. Talk to us about you are a bus driver.
Hmm.
You know, it's so extreme. So many parts of your story is so extreme and all over the place. So that's what
Hmm.
makes you
Hmm.
this well-rounded individual
Hmm.
now, that it just had so many different integral parts. Talk to us about MTA, to
Hmm.
talk about what that was like and how that led you into it was like a domino. I can see,
Yeah.
it was more like a domino effect.
Right. Everything is connected. Yeah. So when I turned 18, so I thought I was supposed to be Ivy League. I feel like if my mom was around, if she lived longer, she would have set me up properly. Maybe
Okay.
she didn't know the people. Maybe she was a nurse, right? She wasn't necessarily connected to any Ivy League things like that, but she would have found people.
Right.
She was very well at saying, "My son is talented. He's bright. He's smart. How can you help him?" She would find mentors for me, right? When she passed, my grandfather wasn't necessarily like that, right? He didn't see it that way, because of his traumas and things like that. And so you know, when I turned 17, I was like the top of the class. I had recruiters coming to the house, wanted to get me into the schools, but then he would embarrass me by sharing all of the family history and the problems and the drugs and all that stuff. And at that time, I would be embarrassed by it. Now I know that that was his way of explaining his traumas. That was the way he letting out his traumas and things like that. What happened, and so I didn't have the proper land off until adulthood. And so I had to kind of make my own way. And luckily, I my first career started in like luxury retail. So one of my first jobs was at Saks Fifth Avenue,
Mhm.
and that put me in a different place with around different people. I was able to find mentors in that place. Then I worked in Louis Vuitton and Prada, those type of stores for a while. But then I got a taste of entrepreneurship at like 23. So this is around when eBay first, came out and people were selling things on eBay. And I was like, what can I sell on eBay? And a friend of mine was like, well, you got connections on all these stores. Why don't you sell some of these luxury goods on eBay? So I started selling luxury shoes on eBay, making a killing. Right, I would get these shoes for $50, and they would sell for
Right,
450. Like my rent was, I had my own place because I took custody of my sister at one point. We had a two-bedroom apartment in Bed-Stuy, and my rent was like $850. But I would make 450 off of one shoe. So I was like, this, why walk in this job? Right. So I ended up quitting the job, and I had a ton of shoes in my spare bedroom. And so I was doing that for a while, but that didn't last for too long. Eventually my supply dried up, and now I had to go back into retail, and the recession hit. It's like
right.
2028, 2008. And my girl, she wanted to have a kid. We've been together for a long time. She wanted so I couldn't be the entrepreneur I wanted to be. So that's why I was like, well, it's a recession. I can't really get back into luxury retail. What can I do? Somebody said, hey, get you a CDL license. They got a program where you can learn CDL. Like, all right, I'll do that then. That's a dependable job, right? So I got a CDL license. Now, no offense to any bus drivers. I was working for Greyhound. No offense to any bus drivers. But I just didn't like the job. I hated it. You know, I hated being away from my friends. I hated being away from my family. I hated that I couldn't make friends because I'm a very social person. But
Mm-hmm.
you could meet a great person on the bus, but you never see them again. So you can't build a relationship with them. You don't have a relationship with your coworkers because they own their own vehicles, right? But a few things they taught me. One, I became a much patient and more professional driver. So much more patient and professional than everyone else. I see the road different than everyone else because you get trained differently. Two, I can see above the traffic. So this is an analogy I like to give when I speak about how I'm going to heal the world, right? When you're in traffic as a regular individual, it sucks because you are stuck in this box. You can't see cars in front of you. You don't know where the accident happening. You don't know how long you're going to be there. You're trying to go to your appointment. It's your personal vehicle. When you're in a bus, you sit higher. You can see above the cars. You know what lane the traffic is in. You know what happened. So you relax. Plus you're at work. So you good, right? So that's how I feel about what's happening now with the tariffs and Trump and the administration. People are going crazy. But I can see above that. I can see opportunities and ways in which we can do better, right? So I'm helping people gain a new awareness so y'all can get on the bus with me. Once you get on the bus with me, you'll see opportunities. You're not as afraid, not as fearful because you can see new things that can happen. So once I once I was I did bus driver for 4 years, but it was a situation in my relationship that caused me to say, what am I doing in my life? This is
Mm.
not the job I want. This is not the life I want to live. Why am I here? Part of me was saying that to me, you know, and that's when I made the change from being a bus driver.
And then where did that lead you? What from being the bus driver, now what? Where did you land now?
Right. So here's what happened, right? I found my girl started becoming cold towards me. And after months of her doing that, I found out she was cheating on me.
Mm,
Right. And so then when that happened, it was like why was I doing all that? Because part of me was doing all that for the sake of the family. Right.
right.
That's why I was working that job. I hated it, but I was like, I'm doing it for the family, right? And so when that happened, I was like, I was doing all the sacrifice for the family, and look what happened. So after all of the boohoo and trying to get her back, after I finished all that, um, I was watching the Godfather one day, and I was like, well, Michael Corleone wouldn't handle his problems like this, and he wouldn't be wearing jeans and sneakers and t-shirts either. You just start dressing like a man, start handling your problems like a man. So I'm
Mm,
gonna do that. And since I had luxury professional clothes in my wardrobe, they were good quality clothes, but I would only wear them when I needed to wear them.
right.
But once I had that epiphany, I started wearing them every day for no reason. So I'll wear them to the mall, to the grocery store, anywhere, everywhere, right? And people started responding to me differently. They started looking at me differently, right? And I started looking at myself differently. So I just stopped going to the bus driving job. I just stopped going to work. I didn't even quit. I just stopped going. I was like, this is not, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't maneuver
Mm,
myself to wear that uniform to go to that place anymore. Right. And so I eventually became a CEO of a youth organization. So I did a lot of volunteer work in those days with an organization that in Bed-Stuy that was connecting the teenagers to the homeowners. They had a Foot Soldiers was the name, Bed-Stuy's Project Regeneration. We would uh, do have the homeowners pay us for like cleaning porting services. And then we would have after school, the kids would come and they would go and, sweep the leaves, put the trash out to the curb, snow removal, things like that. And they would get paid for it. And then our organization was like a home away from home, right? So where we had a PlayStation or the games, we could play with them. We had our own handshake, nicknames, all that type of stuff. So that became a family. But once I started dressing well, the COO was like, well, Ty, I need you on my team to help me grow this organization, right? Because he's seen how my professional appearance was with like open certain doors that it just naturally will open up. So then I started to do that with him.
mm. And how did that grow from there? Because as I said,
It keeps
this
going,
whole
right?
thing is connected. This whole thing, this whole path that you
Right.
have been on has been one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. Where
hmm
did we go from the youth organization?
hmm Yeah.
How
So the next thing after that was image coaching. So when I went to the youth organization, my friends was clowning me at first. We over here at Six Flags towel wearing shoes, right? They would clown me, right? I'm overdressed everywhere I go, right? And so eventually, though, they started seeing how women would respond to me. We would
Mhm.
have certain events, And then a woman would be like, well, who's he? Who's that? Like, well, that's Ty. You ain't met Ty before. No, I never seen him before. Like, it's like, oh, wow, Ty, they don't even know you, and they don't already trying to get to know you. So then that's when my friends like, oh, teach me. How do you do it? Like, because when I wear stuff like that, I look like I'm going to church, right? And you make it look cool somehow. How did you do it, right? And so I told them, like, you gotta go to a tailor. You got the pants don't come fit properly. You got to make them fit properly. So you got to do certain things to your shirts and things like that. Then once it fits well, now it fits you for you, and it
Mm,
looks better on you, right?
mm,
And so I started teaching them slowly, and then they started to transform their life, like their dating, the organization went well, and so that's when it's like, it's how you should become an image coach. Like, where would we have gone to learn these things if it wasn't for you to teach us?
mm,
So then that's when I started to like help other people. I started to go on Facebook and say, hey, listen, if you want to learn how to dress, and I would speak about dressing well from a different perspective. I would speak about it as in, if you know you went to school for your degree, you went and learned the skills, you got your great resume, you got your great website, you got a great business card, but you put these clothes on yourself. Why are you gonna do that? Like, why not also put the effort in how you present? Because when people interact with you, they see you first, and they automatically, naturally make certain assumptions or judgments. They can't help it, right? So why not use that to your advantage? And so I'll put posts up like that on Facebook and then get clients from that. And so, and me becoming an image coach, I met other coaches, and other coaches were helping other people with other things. And so I met one coach who was helping people who were going through divorce, separation, and cheating. And since my story kind of started with infidelity, right? It him and I started to work together. He started having high demand for his program. And so he said, Todd, would you come in and take some of these calls? This happened in 2020. So now I'm working with him, taking these enrollment calls. And these are like guys of all walks of life, right? I had people that was 1%. I had one client who like purchased an apartment on Fifth Avenue, 20 grand a month. He was paying for this woman that he was dating, and she was still running out on him, and he didn't know what to do. So it didn't matter how much money they were making. It didn't matter. It was some people who had arranged marriages that weren't working out, and so I was speaking to 80 men a month, like
wow.
back to back, like on the phone, right here in this on this seat right here, taking clients and rolling them into this program to get their mind back so they can start living their lives again, right? And so that gave me a lot of experience with just what's going on with our male and female interactions. And so I started to learn just the basics of what's happening to all of us, no matter where you come from. It's a human thing, you
Hmm.
know? And
Hmm.
so in the midst of me doing that and me being a coach, and I was on many podcasts about my story from being a bus driver to, the COO and all of that. I met other people in that environment. And I met one woman, Duran Young, who's the founder of Black Therapist Rock. So she introduced me to IFS. She came to me and said, our friendship, she said, the IFS Institute is very white, and they want to add more diversity, you know, and there's not many Black men in these spaces. There's a lot of Black women who are therapists and social workers and things like that, not too many Black men. And she was like, you speak well. Would you want to do a demo with them? And a demo is basically they record your therapy session. I was like, all right, she's my friend. Sure, I'll do a demo with them, no problem. And I ended up doing a demo with Dr. Richard Swartz, who's the founder of the model. Now,
Hmm.
I didn't care who he was because I'm not in that world. Not a big deal to me, And so we ended up doing a session about, at this time, I'm working on my image coaching business and I'm an entrepreneur. So I have to work. If I don't work, I don't eat,
Right.
right? So when I'm working, right, I'll be working and a part of me is like, oh, this is boring. Let's do something else. And then I can't focus. So then I'll go and I'll do something else. And then if I do something else for too long, get back to work. We got bills to pay. So now I can't even relax. So that was the polarity that I was having that we worked on in that session, right? And during that session afterwards, those two parts of me made an arrangement where we would
Mm,
have spend time to work during work hours, and then when work hours is over, we'll spend time for leisure, and we'll keep to that schedule. And once they made that arrangement after that session, it was a different awareness within me, a different
mm,
feeling that I had. I didn't have the same resistance to work. And so after that, I was like, wow, that was different. And then from me working with the men, I had a second session with Dr. Schwartz. I had more sessions with Duran. So she gave me my first profound session over the phone, where I was introduced to a part of me that was 8. So remember when I was 8, I was at my grandfather's house. There was times when my mom wasn't available for weekends because the
mhm,
situation she was going through.
mhm,
And if any kid who's going through, if so for kids, like Consistency is important. So if they expect something to happen on the weekend, they expect that to happen on the weekend. If it don't happen on the weekend, traumas can happen,
Right.
right? And so I had an abandonment issue, like an attachment trauma that occurred when my mom wasn't there on the weekend. And so I remember going into that session with Duran, and I was able to go into that part of me. And he was in my grandfather's house, and my eyes are closed during the session. My eyes are closed, so I went in, and he's there, my grandfather, and he's like, he sees me. Now I'm my age now. He's 8, and he's like, oh, he's happy he had company. But my grandfather didn't like people in the house. He had traumas around bringing the outside inside, because there
Yes.
was some
Yes.
traumas
Yes.
that happened with my parents, right? So he didn't want people in the house, so I would be bored, and I'll have to make my own imaginary friends and all that stuff, right? And so I was playing with him, my 8-year-old self, and I could smell the furniture in my
Mm,
grandfather's house, and I
mm.
haven't been in that place in 30 something years, and it blew my mind, right? And so then when we had the second session with Dr. Schwartz, that's when I unburdened that 15-year-old part of me. And then, like I said, that blew my mind. And from that point, I was like, I have to give this to more people. And so since I was coaching men and I got that skill, I started giving that to them. And that's how I got real good at the model.
Talk to us about IFS. What is IFS?
Okay. So IFS stands for Internal Family Systems, right? It's a psychotherapy model. It's been around for 40 years. It's trauma informed and it's evidence based. And the basic premise is that the human mind is a multiplicity. So physically, we have one body, but mentally, we have different parts of us. These parts represent the voices we hear, the emotions we have, the triggers, the dreams. Those are different parts of us. Now, even though these voices sound the same in our head, they're not all the same. They're different ages. They had different experiences. Some of your parts like each other, some dislike each other, right? Like that part of me is like, get to work, right? Who is that? It's not. It can't be me if it's talking to me, right?
Right.
And who's not working? That can't be me either, right? If it's right doing something else. So I would have these internal conflicts, right? But because we don't realize we have parts, we're being led by our parts, right?
Mm,
So we have all these parts, and there's hundreds of parts that we have. Some even say thousands. There's no number that we can count. But in addition to our parts, there's a self. And the self never gets hurt, doesn't get damaged, doesn't hold trauma. So no matter how traumatizing your life was, no matter how much abuse you went through in life, the self remained undamaged. And there's a relationship between the self and the parts that heals the wounds of the parts, right? And so, like I said, because we don't realize we have parts, we led by our parts. So if a part of us gets angry, we become that part. We call that blended. So you see the world through that part's eyes, think the thoughts of that part when you're blending with a part. And when you're blending with a part, you act out in that way because all your parts are trying to protect you, right? They believe they're protecting you. That's why they act that way. And so in IFS therapy, what the therapist is doing, or the practitioner, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, but I was trained the same way the therapists are trained. And I also train some therapists, right? Because the model is very complete. So you can just learn IFS. You don't need other education to really be able to apply IFS. And so when I, so and self heals the wounds of the parts. So when I had the session, right, when you have a session, IFS session, your eyes are closed, and the practitioner or the therapist is walking you through your inner world, right? So I do a workshop for kids, and I ask them. One of the questions I ask them is, "Can you see with your eyes closed?" They'll say, "No, I can't see." So nobody think they can't see with their eyes closed. No, everybody who here can see with their eyes closed, raise your hand. Nobody raised their hand. All right. Has anybody had a dream before? Yeah, raise your hand if you had a dream. Okay, when you was having that dream, was you able to see? Yeah, I was able to see. Was your eyes closed? Well, yeah, it was closed. Right. So you can see with your eyes closed, right? So I make that distinction to say that we're always dreaming. Even right now, you and I are still dreaming. The people who are listening are dreaming. The thing is that we're being distracted by the dream because our eyes are open and we're listening to other things. But if we close our eyes and sit in silence for a little while, we'll start to see, right? So in IFS therapy, we're walking through that path. So in my session about my mom passing, anytime I would try to go to that part of me, that part that was sad about my mom, other parts of me would say, don't go there. Let's not go. So if you went through any trauma that you made it past, an abuse or whatever, and you made it past it, parts of you are going to say, let's keep that door closed. Because if we don't know what's gonna come out that door, we don't want to be depressed or sad, right? We
Right.
don't want to go back into that place. Keep that door closed. But when we keep that door closed, part of us is in that room.
Mm,
And that part of us is in that room has some beautiful stories to tell us. But because we're afraid of that strong emotion, that fear, that abandonment, that sadness, we want to keep that part in that room, right? We in IFS we call it exile,
mm,
right? So we have three types of parts. We have
mhm,
our manager parts. These are the
mhm.
parts that keep us in line. They're like, you gotta pay your bill today. You see what time it is? You gotta go. Did you do that thing? Right. That's how that part speak to you, right? Manage your life, making sure that everything stays subtle. If things don't go subtle, let's say you lost a job, lost a relationship, you start getting emotional, getting frantic, another part comes out called the firefighter part. Now the
The
firefighter parts,
the
firefighters,
firefighters.
firefighter parts, and they come to put out the fire. Now the fire is that strong emotion. Big emotions of sadness, big emotions of depression or worry or anger. They come out to douse that fire. And the way they do it is through like distractions. That's where all of our addictions come from. So they put the fire of the strong emotion out like a firefighter would. When a firefighter puts out some fire, they don't care about your artwork on the walls. They don't care
Mm,
about your electronics. They don't care about breaking the windows. They got to put the fire out by any means necessary. That's why the fire part speak. We got to do this by any means necessary. So you start feeling sad. Hey, look at this phone. Scroll here. Play video games. Hey, smoke this. Drink this. Speak. Have it. That's how we get into those situations because they try to keep those fires out. Now the third part is what these two parts are protecting from, and that's the exile part. The exile parts were pushed out of the family by the internal family, right? So back to my story of me being 15. When my mom passed, I was a funny, cool, smart kid. Those are my parts. Not the sad kid with no parents. So that part got pushed out of the family. You can't go to school being sad. We go to school being sad. Where we gonna go to be normal? If people treat me like a sad kid, where would I go to be funny? Where would I go to be smart? They're gonna all feel sorry for me and all that. I don't want that. So you gotta stay
mm,
home with that sadness. They exiled it, right? And so that part got stuck. When you exile a part, it gets stuck in the pain, gets stuck. It can't release the anger, it can't release the frustration, can't release the sadness. It's stuck, right? The way that we release it is through relationships. And so when I had that session with Dr. Schwartz, we went inside. My eyes are closed. Now my other parts, I had to ask them to give me some space. And when they gave me the space, I was able to go in that place. And when I went in that place, that part of me was still in my bedroom at 15. He was stuck in 1996.
mm,
There's no time in our minds,
right.
right? You can have a dream tonight. You're in high school and you don't question the dream. You just act out high school. So he was stuck in time and he was confused that it was two of us. But once I started to interact with him, I befriended him. I let him know, listen, I'm not 15 no more. What? You're not 15? No, I'm not 38 now, bro. What? I got a son who's almost 15. What? He's stuck in that place. So to him, he didn't see the outside world changing, right? So we all have parts stuck in places, right? Those of us who came from the Caribbean, right? And we came here, but our parents stayed, like we have traumas around that. We still got stuck with us that are stuck back home,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And so when I
mhm.
retrieved him, he came out that room. And when he came out the room, my other parts, he's out the room. Group hug. They
Wow.
didn't want to exile him, but they didn't have no other choice.
Right.
Right. So then once he came back to me and he realized I wasn't 15, I now imagine him with me. And now we go drive around my old neighborhood and he's able to see, oh, they changed that. They changed. It was like a time travel. Right. And so I asked them, now that you know I'm not 15 anymore, what role do you want to have in my life? Because exiles don't have a role in your life because they pushed out of the family. But once you retrieve them, they have a new role. Like, what role will you want to have in my life? He told me, I want to go back to school. After 15, I couldn't go to school because of the sadness kept me away from school. I want to go back to school and I want to help the young men who are going through stuff I went through. So that's when I created the Well Dress Academy for the young men and boys.
Wow. Wow, what a story. So now let's talk about the Well-Dressed Academy. I have to applaud you for this. I mean, it's a great program. It's a great, great program. It's a good fit. It's just a good fit for these kids and where they are to help them get over humps, right? Because sometimes we all trapped in exile.
Right.
or parts of us,
Right,
and we may have many doors of exile, right?
right, right,
Right.
right,
So, I do, my heart is just so heavy for the way that things are going for the youth nowadays and how things are in exile for them, their creativity, their hope is in exile.
right, right.
You providing a space where you can open up some of those doors is just amazing. Talk to us about
Yes.
the program. What is it? Dressing, making, Well Dress Academy, Well
Well, just
Dress
academy.
Academy,
Yes,
Well Dress
yes,
Academy. Talk to me about that.
yes. So
Yeah,
when
you made
I
me spruce up today. I'm not. I said, oh, I
that happens
gradually,
often,
I
right?
said, let me use a hairbrush this morning. Let me not
Exactly.
let this guy think that, let me show, I don't really do this on Trendsetters that much. So let me just take this opportunity to just, wash
Hmm.
my face.
Exactly, exactly. That goes to show we all connected. We
Definitely.
all inspire each other, and
Yes,
the way that I'm going to change the world is by example, not by force,
absolutely.
by example, right?
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
the reason why I dress well every single day. It's my I don't feel comfortable in sneakers and jeans and stuff like that. I don't even own jeans,
Right.
like not
My
one
dad was
pair.
like that. My
You
dad was
know.
like that. Dad was like that 1000%. He did own jeans, but it was like for trivial things, like the day that
Hmm.
he worked on the car,
Hmm.
and then I believe to a certain degree he may have been so uncomfortable in jeans that he bought overalls so that, the overalls
Right.
fit the
Right.
role. You understand what
Right.
I'm saying?
Exactly.
He
Exactly.
dressed. This is car
Exactly.
day, so he dressed for that purpose. I don't think that I ever saw my father not dressed to a T, not
Hmm.
not being and like you said, people do respond
Right.
to you that way. So
Right.
fortunately, I have a mother that, she's known as the family's Jackie O.
Hmm.
And then my dad was just Rico Suave. I mean,
Hmm.
you can't get any more macho machismo
Hmm.
if you packaged it. So,
Right.
I'm the baby, so I got
Hmm.
it. But yeah, talk to us about this program with the youth. That's my thing.
Hmm.
Kids, talk to us about how you touch in life and share with us some of your, most difficult times and the most inspiring times in doing this. And what is Well Dress Academy?
Yes. So when I decided I was doing work in schools for some time, with the youth organization and other organizations. And then when I started to get this IFS tool, I started putting it into everything else.
Mm,
And then when I started to build things, when I recognized that it's not just me here, it's not just me, the entrepreneur, right? It's also my younger parts, my 8-year-old part, that they would be the ones who would distract me from working, right? Once I brought them into the fold of who I am and what my mission is, they started to get excited and they were like, how can we help? Right. And so when I unburdened that 15-year part, how can I help with that? And so we say, okay, we're going to put together a system in which we're helping these young people. And we want to make sure that one, it's sellable to the adults, but two is also good for the kids. So they see it as a game. So, and I wanted to take all of the things that helped me in my life and put it into this program. And so the first thing that I recognize for myself, the reason why do I think I can heal the world? Why am I so confident and think I can do that? It's because of the stuff that my mom put into me.
right,
And I knew who I was. I never wanted to be like anybody else. I wasn't a follower. That was a bad word when I was a kid. Being a follower, that was a bad word, right?
right.
Now everybody's trying to get followers, right? And so I was a person who was my own style. I want people copying off of me. I want to do my own thing. So when I put together the training, I was like, one, I wanted to put together a training where the young people can start to look internally first. Look
Mm,
inside to see who you are first before you start trying to be something else. I
mm,
knew who I was, and that was my foundation. And because I knew who I was, I know certain places weren't for me. Certain people weren't for me, certain friends, certain environments, certain activities just weren't for me because I had a strong foundation of who I am. And I wasn't wavering. I was happy and proud about who I am. And I feel like the kids today don't really have that. They're
Mhm.
following after these other trends and things like that. And that's what's getting them hurt, getting them killed, the train surfing, all those things is they're following, trying to find a path, you
Mhm.
know. And so I turned the train into like a game. Like one of my young parts, oh, we can make it a game. So it's levels. So level one is, who am I? Or more
Mhm.
accurately, who are we? Because we're not one, we are multiplicity. So it's more accurate to say we, right? So who are we? And in that discovery, I get them to look inside. I teach them IFS tools, that we're multiplicity. What parts are you? Which part is up now? Which part is listening to me right now? What is it saying to you about what I'm saying, right? And so I get them to understand who they are, and it goes through a process of like, how, what's your gift, what's your talent, how do you use that, how would you use it now today? So even though I teach young men how to dress well, I don't do I don't teach them how to tie ties and stuff like that. I feel, me personally, feel like it's a waste of time, because when I need to learn how to tie a tie, I watch a YouTube video, and I watch a YouTube video over and over and over until I got it, right?
Right.
So I'm going to give them something they can use right now, right? And so I took the training and I made it into our levels, and then I had a companion training that was for the parents, because I
Mm.
wanted the parents to speak to their kids similar to how my mom spoke to me. Show them their gifts and their talents. They can't see themselves. Like, we can't see our own eyeballs. So if somebody else sees something that we do well, then we can look at ourselves. That's what my mom did to me. I wouldn't have known that this was a talent unless she said it was. I wouldn't have known that that was funny unless somebody laughed. I
Right.
wouldn't have known that, right? And so, how can we be that to our kids? So when I created the training, I went to the studio and I recorded a series of videos that was connected to the training. And then when I went into the school, I went to like the fairs and all that stuff to get the principal's attention. And I got one school in uptown in Dyckman Heights, high school for law and public service. They like my family now. We've been doing it for 2 years with them. And so when I introduced the training to the principal, I told her about the companion trainer for the parents. So, oh, you could do something for the parents? Like, yeah, I have a trainer for them. Oh, can you produce something for the parents? So then I started to go into, produce something for the parents. And I created a training called Connected with Teens, right?
Mhm.
Because we have as I got a 15-year-old. Sometimes, right, depending on the relationship with them, the communication could be disconnected, and then you start losing your kid. They don't listen to you anymore. They're paying attention to what's on TikTok and what their friends are saying, and now you
Mhm.
can't instill this wisdom in them. And because they're doing these things, now you wagging your finger at them, so that's pushing them away even further, right?
Mhm.
And with these IFS tools are for therapy, but also for just basic relationship tools, right? And so I put those tools inside the training as well. And the beautiful thing about the young men is, some of the conversations that I'm having with them, no one has ever had these conversations with them at all, right? And so I first get them to see their gift inside before I teach them how to dress well. You can't pick up your pants, all that. That doesn't work. They have it, every correction, every correction that a person makes is a self-correction, not you correcting them. They have
Right.
to see the problem and then want to correct it, right? And so I make them see the problem by first seeing their gift and their talent, right? And then I give this analogy. You went to the store and you was gonna buy you some kicks, and they came and you gave your money, and they came in and gave you the kicks inside of a plastic bag with no box, no sneaker box. You gonna take those kicks? No. Why not? They're probably fake. Okay. So when you walk outside, are you in a box that's really amplifying and showing your value, or are you in a plastic bag? Right. So once they
Right.
make that connection, oh, I do need to stop like this, right? And so that's when they start teaching them other things. I teach them about brotherhood. School teaches kids that to succeed in the world is a single player game. But we know that
Mhm.
succeeding in this world is a multiplayer game. I
Mhm.
got connected to you through
Mhm.
someone that connected you to me. Now we together. You're gonna connect me with other people. It's a multiplayer game to get ahead. But in
Absolutely.
school, you can't. They call it cheating if you help each other out on tests.
Mhm.
It's cheating. So they never learn the skill unless there's a ball involved. They never get a chance to learn how to become a team, right? So they become individuals, and that's the downfall of our society: individualism, right? And so I teach them how to form teams with each other. I teach them how to be better friends with each other. I teach them how to speak to the adults. The adults are the ones with all the power. Do you know how to speak to them? Shake their hand, look them in the eye, be polite. Do you know these things? No. Well, if you don't know it, then it's going to be hard for you to get ahead, right? But if I could teach you these one or two skills, you'll get ahead, right? And so I teach them these skills. So all these the things, and when I go into the schools, it's my 15-year-old part of me that's with them. So when they joke, I'll be joking. Sometimes I'm a little too far. I gotta bring that
Yeah.
15-year-old part. All right, now we the one who got the adult part too. They don't got adult parts yet, right? So we gotta be the one. You know what I mean? And there's also that part of me that was 17. That's like I want to make sure they have a network. If you had a family member who had connections, you won't have to interview the same way the other person do. You won't have to give your resume the same way the other person do. I'm that person that's your connection. And then even beyond this, right? My mission is to heal the world. I'm going to need soldiers. So some of my friends, they call me Professor Xavier, right? Because I'm out here helping these kids. I'm going to be a real life. At some point, you're going to see me as a superhero because I'm gonna be doing superhero stuff. I'm gonna give police another option for solving some of the issues they have with crimes and gangs and things like that. The only solution they think they have is policing and surveillance. There's another solution, right? And I'm gonna offer that solution. And it's gonna solve the problems and then offer actual healing for the community that was formerly vandalized, right? And so I tell these kids, even though I'm coming to the school to help you with these things, I'm really grooming you for
Mhm.
this mission that I'm on. So one of the first people that will hire you is most likely going to be me. And I'm gonna have you come in. You're high school now, but I'm gonna have you come in and interact with the elementary school kids
Right.
and help them go up so that we each want to teach you one. I'm gonna build a whole system of that.
Wow. And as what are some of the hardest um spaces that you see these young men in today?
Mm. So the places that really hurt me, or parts of me, is like the prison system. You know,
Mhm.
I did some stuff in I did some workshops in Rikers Island. This is before I had IFS awareness, and this is before I was doing this type of work. But when I went in there, we was doing like a professional development training, and every person that I seen, you know, I seen people that they remind me of. They remind me of somebody that I knew,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I couldn't call them inmates. I called them students, right? I couldn't like be negative towards them, and immediately they felt that connection because they were used to getting interacted with the people who got the funding. You know, they're white folks, and you know they got the funding and they're doing the things and they're doing the work, but there's not a heart to heart connection,
Right.
right? It's a mind to mind connection, but not a heart to heart connection with them. And so I came in, I'm like, nah, bro, listen, I could have been in here with y'all if I was stopped at the right time, wrong time, if I was with the wrong people, if I was pulled over at this time, I might have been in here with y'all too. Same as him, sporting to the guard. Him too. He could have been in here if he was stopped at the wrong time. So I can't treat y'all no different. And the majority of them are in there because they're poor.
Right.
They're in there because they don't have money. They don't
Right.
have the resource. They either
Right.
got in there because they was trying to make money illegally, or they're in there because they couldn't bail themselves out of there, right? And so I'm not going to treat y'all like that. And I feel like men and women are one side of the same coin. We're not separate species, right? We're the same thing. We're the same, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
In our culture now, we're being separated. And that's why there's a big decline in our world. Even birth rates are going down. When birth rates start going down, that's a critical that the whistle should be going off, right? We're the same side of the we're different side of the same coin. So when I go in there to help those young men, I'm helping the families that they left. Some of them have kids that are not don't have their fathers around. Some of them are, you know, they're very important for their family structure. And the male energy, the way the man look at the world is very important for a family unit. The way women look at the world is very important for a family unit. When our men are being taken away through mass incarceration, through crimes, through unemployment, through all those things, it hurts us all. And we're all connected. Even though my family may not be going through that, my family is still interacting with your family in the
Absolutely.
restaurant, on public transportation, wherever in the hospital, wherever they go, we still bumping up against each other. And if your stuff ain't right, that could make my stuff not right. So I gotta care about your stuff not being right. So anywhere where there's people, that's where I want to be to help the people. And prisons is one place that I want to get into. Juvenile facility, and those people who are there, I got a whole plan. I got a whole plan for everybody for this mission because we're going to need a lot of people to for this mission to be a success.
Talk to us about your book, best-selling author here. What is it? Freeing Self, IFS Beyond the Therapy Room. So now we know about IFS and we know about how fundamental it is of a tool, even in your personal journey. Talk to us about this book.
Yeah. So when I first came into
I
the
sit behind
IFS,
you. I noticed,
yes,
a
I
good
put it,
plug.
yes,
That's a good plug.
yes. So when I was so I was pretty well known in the IFS community before I got trained because of my relationship with the Rand Young, and that very first session with Dr. Schwartz was used in trainings. So a lot of people was able to see me, and they was impressed by the fact that I was able to communicate with my parts. Like, so when you first have a session, at first you may not, most of us can't disconnect from the fact that we think we are who we are. We
Mm,
think that we know ourselves already because we look at ourselves in the mirror and we've been with ourselves all of our life. But we
mhm,
don't recognize that we have different parts. So when somebody mentions this concept of parts, for some people it's hard to grasp. For me, it was pretty easy to grasp because when I was with my grandfather, I was alone and I would have my imaginary friends, and there will be versions of me, versions of my cousins, and all that, right? And so I already had this awareness. Um, so when I got trained and I was using IFS in more creative ways, so I wasn't just doing it like therapists do. Therapists do one-on-one, but I was doing it in one-on-one. I was doing it in group settings. I was working with an audience that hate therapy, which was
mm,
divorced men who were going through relationship issues because the therapist was most likely a woman, and she would mostly side with the woman because the woman is more emotionally expressive and the man is more pent up emotionally. So the therapist don't have nothing to grab onto, so it's his fault, even if she's the one who did the infidelity. And so a lot of men was like away from that. But I came in here with this therapy model and they already trusted me.
mhm,
So I was
mhm,
giving it to them and I was having profound like changes immediately with them. And so I
mm,
was speaking about this in IFS conferences and things like that. And then when I spoke at the IFS conference and the authors was like, well, would you want to do this book with us? We about to finish. We already have the authors that we want, but we need to have you in this book. Would you be willing to do the book? And I was like, let me take a look at that. Let me think about that. I asked her, and she said that would be great for you. That'd be great for you to speak about your IFS journey. And so I was like, okay, I'll do the book. But they say you're not going to get any royalties on the book. It's a collaborative effort, right? So would you still be willing to do the book? I was like, sure. Anytime there's an opportunity for me, but it's not going to be a financial gain immediately, parts of me are like, okay, how can we make this worth it 10 times over?
right.
Right. And so when I went to write the chapter in the book, I was like, okay, first things first, this IFS awareness helped me retrieve a part that I lost in one session from my mom passing. That is huge. And I'm not special. If I can do it, we can all do it. Right. But my people have no idea what IFS is. How
Right.
can I write something to bring my people into this healing? And so I wanted to make it a story. So other authors in the book were writing as academics, right?
Mm,
They were writing it as if they were professionals and here's their clients. But I wanted to write it as a story, as a healing journey from a person who also heals people, right? And so first thing is I wanted to be able to bring people into that awareness. So I wrote it from that perspective. I also wanted it to be for my family. So they could, because they don't know the details about what I do. They know I help people dress well because I'm always coming to the events. They know who I am, but they don't know exactly what I do. So like, let me give something for my family to know the details of what I do. Then I was like, I wanted to be a tool also.
mm,
I wanted to be entertaining. And I wanted to have all of my plans written in between the lines for myself, right? And so when the book came out, it came out at the IFS conference in 2023, which was the first one in person since the pandemic, which I spoke, right? I did like a 6-hour workshop with another gentleman in the IFS community, Dr. Philip Butler, and we blew the house down. Like it was only 3 Black men in the whole conference,
wow.
and
Wow.
we was 2 of the 3, right? And we blew the house down to the point where people was like, "Oh, Ty, I love you, appreciate it." It was just amazing. So when the book came out, I told my family, I got the book. It's like, "Oh, congratulations! Like, y'all gonna get the book? Wow, how much is the book? It's $25. $25. Can I just borrow your book?" I'm like, but I knew that might happen. I knew that might happen, right? So I was like, all right. I went to the studio. Paid an engineer. I was like, I want to record this audiobook. Now, the authors didn't put it on Audible yet. It was going to be a
Mm,
year before they got it on Audible. So I said, I'm going to do it on my own dime, and I'm going to make it interactive. So I recorded it. And when the book came out, and I read it, there's certain areas where I get emotional,
Yes, you can hear it.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, why these emotions are still like this? Let me record this so people can feel those emotions as well. So when I'm talking about healing, it's not fake. This is real healing that I've been able to achieve. And in the past, I could not talk about my mom passing. I used to
Mm,
a lot of people because that part is stuck in a place. I don't want to be start talking and start crying. My protective parts won't let my face do that in public, right? And so I couldn't tell that story, right? But once I was able to heal from that, I'm able to tell a story. So now let me bring people into that, especially my family.
Story, my AirPods connected. So when the book came out, I recorded it and I did it interactive. So I planned it all out. I did the impersonations. I recorded it, and then I was like, I'm gonna give this away for free to people.
mm,
You could just listen and you could be brought into the awareness. I did a nice intro so you understand what IFS is going in. So it's a complete body of work. And then I have an outro, which I'm going to be updating soon so you can know the updates of what I've been doing. But it brings you through my IFS journey, what I do as a coach for the image coaching for the men who are going through relationship issues. So if you're going through a relationship issue, you're going to learn from this. A divorce, you're going to learn from how to bounce back from that, right? I go into my story from my childhood. I also go into forgiving my mom, forgiving my grandfather, right? Because I recognize that even though they didn't do these things on purpose, they had traumas, and they didn't have the tools to get past the traumas. So they acted in their protective parts, and their protective parts is what interacted with me. Now, when my grandfather would say those negative things about me in school, I took it as, he don't believe in me. He don't trust me. He don't know my potential. My mom wouldn't have did this. She knew my potential. Once I was able to unblind from that, I was able to see his pain. And I was also able to see if he didn't know my potential, he wouldn't have gave up his golden years to
right.
be there for me, to be there for me and my sister. He wouldn't have did that if he didn't believe in me, right? And so once I was able to heal from that, and then when I was able to heal from that, I was able to gain his wisdom, his talents. He was a number man in the neighborhood, so he was like real social, and I have those skills, and I would tap into that, right? And so when you go through the story, you go through a healing journey. And if you listen a second time, you start seeing the tools that's in between the lines, right? And so that book is a part of my healing ecosystem. And I wanted to create a healing ecosystem that people can go into and start to heal before they even pay any money. They start coming into this awareness of how they can heal, pathways in which to heal. That's very effective.
I'm going to go back a little bit and I want you to talk to me about your men's group. And obviously, it got started from a place where you were at the time in your process and your breakup and wanting to help men through that, because it can be traumatizing, especially if you went to therapy and you're being victimized now in therapy, to a degree, to a sense, right? And I want you to talk to me about that. I'm extremely intrigued because I'm a therapist, and I want to hear how IFS has helped you to help these men navigate through this.
Mhm. Yeah, so when you get trained in IFS, one of the first things that you realize is first you have to recognize you have parts. So you have to recognize you have parts. And when you recognize you have parts, when you go into a session, but if you're a therapist and you get just getting trained, you're going to realize that in some of your sessions, you're letting your parts lead,
Yes. Okay.
right? And sometimes your parts, so parts have agendas, right? They have a goal, they have an agenda. And usually their agenda is based on some fear, right? So when I first learned the model, I would have a part of me that wanted to get this epiphany. I want them to have an epiphany session like how I did. But if I go in there with that part, then now I'm doing things, saying things, forcing things that's not good for the client, right? So I have to recognize that part of me, speak to that part of me, get that part to relax so that I can be self-led. When you're self-led, it's your parts have stepped back and they allow in self. And self is like this is like the sun behind the clouds. On a cloudy day, you can't see the sun, right? The clouds will represent the parts. But when the clouds part out the way, the sun is always there. It didn't move, it didn't push the clouds, it was just present. That's what self is, right? And so when we do an IFS session, my parts have relaxed. Self is there, and self is there to see your parts. And self is always compassionate, always curious, always calm, connected. It has these qualities, right? And those qualities with your parts allows your parts to ease. Because when parts are interacting with other parts, that's where the clashes come from, right? But when parts, self is here, parts relax, right? And so in a session, I'm guiding you through your own system from a self place. So I'm not pushing or forcing. Your system is bringing you to where you need to go. And your parts know where the trauma is. That's why IFS is so effective. We don't have to go through all your story. The part I will ask you, when was the first time you felt that? The part that take you right to that memory. Man, not only take you to the memory, but you'll be 5 years old. And when your eyes are closed, and you can interact with that 5-year-old, right? And it's so profound. Not only is it profound in that way, but your ancestors are here too, right? I'm tapped in. I get downloads all the time. My whole life is why is this happening? Oh, that's why. Like, I got tons of stories about how it's no coincidence that we on the phone. If you listening to my voice right now, it's no coincidence that you're listening to this. There's no coincidence. I'm tapped in. So anything that happens, I know this is where I'm supposed to be, right? And so I'm supposed to be doing this work. When it comes to me helping the guys, they were coming in kind of jaded about therapy and it doesn't work. Some of them were on medication because they were so down. When a man goes through a separation from his wife, like especially if he had parts that were striving to support the family, he gave up his life, he did the work, he grind, he worked 80 hours a week, and then infidelity happens, he feel like, what was that all worth? It was for nothing, right? So that part of him feels crushed. But not only that part, but the young part of him too, who's seen their wife like their mom, who gave them unconditional love and cared for them and cooked for them and hugged them and kissed them and caressed them and was the intimacy for them. When that relationship is over, that young kid is that's the one crying.
Mm.
But because we don't recognize we have parts, we're crying. And we don't, why am I crying over this? It's that 5-year-old, that 8-year-old, my 15-year-old. When that situation happened with me, it was a new abandonment because that was the injury I had when my mom passed. It was an abandonment that happened, right? And so this relationship ending felt similar, another abandonment, right? And because your parts don't have time, it can be just like it was when it first happened to that part, right? And so when I came in and I started introducing these tools to them, the first tool I introduced to them, this is for the audience, right? Is instead of you saying, I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed, you say, a part of me is stressed. Because when you say a part of me, you gain some space. You recognize that it's not all of me, it's a part of me. And so now the parts that aren't stressed can look at that part versus I'm stressed. If I'm stressed, I'm consumed with the stress. I need an outside force to help me unstress, which is where our drugs come from, which is where all the things that we do that unhealthy, we look into the outside world. But we were created whole. Everything we need is within us. Self can be described as God. Some of us describe self as God within us, right? And we all have it. It's in every single one of us. We were born that way, right? And so once I started to do that work with them, like one of my I speak about this in the book. I had one client, successful engineer, talented, gifted, but he had a situation with his wife where she has him picking up the kids from dance class. He got to pick up one kid from karate practice. And like, I got stuff to do. And he's pissed off at her, pissed off for all the stuff. And I was like, all right, brother, let's just take some time and relax. You're blended with a part that's pissed off by this. Let's see if you can get that part to relax a little bit. And if that part, we'll see what it would need from you. Ask it, what would it need to relax? He didn't recognize he was blended. Once he unblended from that part, I was like, okay, now I want you to welcome in those parts you that's an engineer and have that part look at the problem. And he was like, oh, I can just hire an Andy. Problem solved, right? And so once I started to do that with the guy, and I would always do this in group settings, right? And so the other guys would see like, wow, that was amazing. How can I do that? And I started to teach them how to do these things, and it was so empowering for them. And they was able to pull themselves out of that low place pretty quickly. And so that's when I was like, okay. And once they started to become more self, like I had some guys who was like, Ty, I went to my therapist and they want me to get on medication. Should we still, I know I have a session with you on the calendar. Should I have the session with you? I was like, let's have the session and we'll see what happens afterwards. So they have the session with me, like, how's it going? Like, everything is good, and then sadness over his face. It's one of my guys, Dan, right? He's one of my poster childs, right? Sadness came over his face. And then after that session, he was able to unblend from that part that was sad and then give that part what it needed, right? And once he gave that part what he needed, he was like, wow, if I was the guy, if I would have had got medication, it would have just caused me to dull that part of me. And I would never really get to understand the story behind this part, who it is, what it needs. I would have just shut it down. I would have muted it. And if I would have muted that part, I would have lost the gifts that it has, because that 15-year-old part of me that was sad for my mom passing, he wasn't a sad part. He was a part that was sad. Once he stopped being sad, he blossomed into this beautiful person that he is. All of our, even parts we don't like, if you get them, understand why they do what they do, they blossom into these beautiful things. That means all people you don't like. Once you understand that that's a part of them that's doing that, and they unblend, they'll blossom into something else, and they'll become more self-led. And that's the mission.
It's so much. It's so much, it's so much all in one, right? Right? It's so much, it's so many, as you said, parts, right? It's so many parts. You even made more parts. And, I guess this is the reason why you're here. Talk to us about, what does this mean to you, heal the world, right? You're the man on a mission to heal the world, right? This is how you identify with Ty Cutner.
Right.
Right? This is your purpose, and this is what drives you every day.
Right. Right.
Let me see through your eyes what that means.
Yeah. So the human race is a family. We're one big family, right? We're a very dysfunctional family. And the reason why we're dysfunctional is because we see each other as others. We have this us and them mentality. But there's no such thing as them. There's only us.
Because we're
right?
human.
Because we're human, right? So when we say we have to fight against them, we're fighting ourselves. Right now, we don't realize that, and I'm not here to convince anybody of that, right? What happened was, once I started to do healing internally, and I realized there was a whole world in there was family members. In order for me to help that part, like, because the part of me that wanted to work, like my very first session, right? The part of me that wanted to work, he wanted to get rid of that other part that procrastinated and wanted to play. He wanted to get rid of it, right? Like, we may have parts of us that we don't like. We on a diet, but yet we can't stop eating chocolate cake. Let me get rid of that, right? We want to be disciplined. We read the self-help book, tell you discipline yourself. Get rid of that part of you that's doing X, Y, Z. But you cannot get rid of any of your parts. And all of your parts are trying to help you. They're your internal family. So when I started to heal certain wounds, right, from the situation, there was no guns used. There was no knives used. There was no bombs used. There was a understanding that took place. There was a relationship. There was a bond, and there was an appreciation. There was some compassion given. And when I opened my eyes, I seen new ways of solving problems in the outside world, right? The more and more that I did that, the more and more I was able to see what the problems that everyone is having. And everyone is having the same issue. It's a part-to-part battle. Whether it's a parent and a child, a husband and a wife, Black people, white people, Ukraine, Russia, no matter what it is, it's a part-to-part battle. If I give this awareness to everyone, we will all be healed from that. We will realize we're all connected. We all share consciousness. We're sitting in our own piece of the consciousness, right? We all on this planet, and this planet is our mother. It feeds us all, it shelters us all. We're the kids of that planet, right? And so once I started seeing that from that perspective, and then that connected to my younger parts, right? My younger part, I was a big video game player as a kid. And I was big in video games, right? And so I would, when I couldn't play video games, I would turn the outside world into a video game. When I was outside, I would act like, if I'm, let's say back in the days, we played outside as kids, right? And so you couldn't stay in the house all day, right? You better go outside and play, right? And sometimes I would come outside, no other kids outside. I'm not about to go back inside. You go back inside, you better stay inside, right? So I'm not about to go back inside. So we're gonna figure out something to do. Here's the problem with kids today. They're not bored. Boredom is important for imagination, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I would have an imagination. I would make the outside world my game. And so when I connected my younger parts to who I am and what I'm doing now, they said, well, what if we gave this to everybody? We would heal the world, right? And then they started to see it as a game. So when I say I'm gonna heal the world, it's I used to play games like SimCity, right?
Okay.
Where you're building and you
Gotta
have the
build.
whole
Yes.
landscape. You
Yes.
can see the whole, like all everything, and everything is connected, and you're able to help everybody, right? So I'm looking at the world from a 30,000 viewpoint, realizing that all these people down here are my family. I don't want anybody to die. I want all of us to be loved and cared for so we can recognize that we're still just kids. We're older physically, but we're still kids. And what if we play like kids, like we used to do back in the day? Life will be happier for all of us, right? And so I look out this world and I say, okay, how will we do it? I ask these parts. Well, how did the world get like this first? They don't realize who they are internally. Their eyes are open too much, so they fight. So how do we give it to them? Well, we can solve some of the problems and then put the solutions in their music, put the solutions in the movies, put the solutions in TV shows, put the solutions in cartoons, put the solutions in video games. Because all the negative things are in movies. When you listen to music, it's speaking negatively, right? When you
Absolutely.
play video games right now, we got all of our kids playing games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. They simulate in being a killer. And we wonder why there's all these mass shootings. Well, you're speaking, when they play those games, those parts of them are activated and they're training, right?
Mhm.
They're being seen. We
Mhm.
don't have them playing games where it's about building and creating, right? What if we made them play games like that? Then they would see a bigger vision, right? And so, and what if we had them do it all over the world, right? And I said, there's no question and there's no coincidence that we are Black. Black people are the most entertaining of the groups of humans. Black people are the most funniest, right? The world watches us. They love our culture, love our movies, love our music. Well, let's use those talents and gift and put this healing in that, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm
Mhm.
not a musician, but I can just connect to the musicians and we could make music like this based on this, right? If you listen to the music our kids listen to, like the music I used to listen to when I was a kid, they're rappers and artists, they're like 19, 20, 21. And they're speaking from their perspective, their immature perspective on how to solve problems. And then they put it on these nice sounding beats, make it rhyme, sound real good. And they put it out there into the culture. And then that music goes into us and we hear it and it activates certain parts of us. That's how I should solve my problem. Just kill them. Just smack them. Just cheat on her. Or she's a this, she's a that, right? Well, we could put the healing stuff in these music too. I'm not going to demigrate what's out there. I'm not going to preach or boycott it. I'm just going to create alternatives.
Mhm.
And then I'm
Mhm.
going to create this alternative. I'm basically making a new world. And then I'm going to invite you into this new world with me. Come in, listen to the music that's in here. Come in, come interact with me. Come share your problem with me. See how I respond to it versus how somebody else in the current world will respond to it. And now that you like it, how about you help me make this world bigger? Right? And then as the world become more self-led with more self-led people, people are going to say, okay, so Ty, what about, you know what they did to the other leaders who try to make these changes? You're not afraid they're going to do that? No, because if they want to beat us, if they can't beat us, then they're going to join us. And when they join us to start learning these tools and become self-led, the parts of them that are racist will be healed. They will be seen and appreciated and understood and be healed, right? I believe that Black folks are the true are supposed to be in a different position on in this planet. We're not supposed to be at the bottom the way we are now, right? We're at the bottom of every good list and at the top of every bad list. I believe that we're supposed to be closer to the top because the world likes looking at us. They like watching us. They like hearing us speak. Why is that? Because we're the natural leaders. We're also the ones who have a deeper capacity for compassion, right? We all know what happened to Black folks in this country. And yet, we're not killing nobody. We're not flying planes in the buildings. We don't even want to do that. We're not trying to do that's not something that we would do. But yet, if it was other people, if other people with lighter skin had what happened to us happen to them, they would have eliminated those people. They would have wiped them off the planet, right? We have a deeper capacity for compassion. If we was the ones in charge of the world, we won't be bombing people like it's happening now. We wouldn't let people be in hunger. We wouldn't do that. But the thing is that how are we going to change the world? Because I believe the world is upside down, right? How are we going to change the world? We're not going to change the world by eliminating the people that are doing bad things. We're going to collectively be better. And how do we do that? It's not about money. And I know Black folks like, we don't got our money, we got to get our money up and all that, we got to invest in it. That's important, but it's not step one. It's like step 4 or 5. Step 1 is mental space. That's where we went wrong. This mental space. We're following their ways of being, and their ways is a little bit immature. They're younger than we are mentally, right? And they still have the burdens of being in Europe when there was scarcity and famine and disease, and they come to this country, even though it's more abundance now, they still have those parts that are fearful of that happening. And those their parts protect them from it happening again. This is why we want to bomb and hoard our resources. If we was in charge, we came from places of abundance. Our ancestors are still here with that abundance mindset. Once we stop following them and start following another path, we'll become an example for the world, and then the world will start following us. And when they start following us, that's when the world will change. And it won't take a generation. It's not going to take a whole generation. It's going to happen within 10 to 15 years, my timeline.
You gave us so much, I'm so full right now. I'm so full. I'm so full. I totally agree with the ideology. I may not word it the same way, but this is the reason why we have gateways to success, right? Because we are talented. We are talented and gifted and phenomenal beings. And we've been that since history. Since the history of man, we've proven ourselves time and time and time and time again. I mean, without Black influence and Black input, we wouldn't have America.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And our resources have been a wealth to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the focus of my youth initiatives is for the youth to tap into and hone into your natural talents, right? I have this way of saying, look, stop having your hand out and create it for yourself, right?
Right.
And stop asking for help and be the help. So a lot of our youth initiatives are just focused around targeting this and honing into your natural talents, your creativity, and giving space to release that. Because I think that the system now is so institutionalized and so I've heard people say it's like the pathway to prison, and we have to change that. We have to create, as a people, I honestly believe, collaboratively, that we have to recreate a system that works for us. Right? I mean, you and I spoke about, what I thought may have been an initial cause to things getting off course, which was when Board of Education, right? It was whatever versus Board of Education. And we had said, we want to go to school. We want to go to school. We want to go to school with them. We want to go to school with them. We want to go to school with them. However, our schools were turning out doctors and engineers and lawyers and phenomenal, dynamic people. We were even in a space where we were helping people to get to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? Our art, our culture, our writing, our everything was top tier, right? At that period, when we were all inclusive as a community, we were top tier. We was knocking it down. Even when the America crumbled with the Depression, it was, Black people who said, y'all ain't got no money. We gonna buy some cars and we gonna drive. You understand what I'm saying? We gonna ride out. We gonna help y'all a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do that for us now, right? Well, getting back to the story, we went to their schools, and it's just like you said, it kind of dumbed us down, right? We didn't learn the same. And it's no fault by theirs that they didn't include us. We weren't included.
Right, right, right.
So to have an expectation to read how phenomenal of a people we are and were throughout history and going to other cultures in school, that they taught what they understood,
Mhm.
right? Martin Luther had some great speeches. They saw that. But they weren't in the struggle with us. So they only can recant what they can to a certain degree. You understand
Mhm.
what I'm saying? But if we structured our school systems around things that worked for us, if we allowed that freedom and that release of maybe the 3-year-old, maybe the 5-year-old, maybe the 8-year-old, maybe the 10-year-old, because I have a whole concept where, the transition from elementary school to junior high school, from high school, from junior high school to high school, those are traumatic experiences. Nothing's the same, right? And little by little, they chop off at your creativity, they chop off at everything, right? And leave you with this little nub of what?
Mhm.
And this is where we losing the kids, right? This is where, because by the time they sharpen that pencil all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, they got a nice big long pencil. And then by the time life sharpens it down, it's down to a little nub. What you gonna do with that?
Yeah, the systems don't know how to do anything better. Like it's not just our kids; it's everybody's kids. The system don't know any better. The way that we're gonna turn things around is we have to do it by example, right? And so I'm not a proponent of fighting the system, breaking the system. I give this analogy that imagine if we were freshwater creatures in the middle of the ocean, in this saltwater ocean, right? And some of us try to eliminate the salt, right? Some people have become great white sharks. They thrive in this environment. Some people have found them a nice coral reef, right? They're successful in this environment. But how do we make a change there? I'm not going to eliminate the salt. What I'm attempting to do is make bubbles of fresh water. Bloop. Come on inside this fresh water and see what it feels like to be in here. Now
Mhm.
go back out in that salt water and see how salty it is. We do it to ourselves too because we're following their process. We're following their system.
Mhm.
This whole movement that I'm doing to heal the world is going to be a beautiful discovery of who we truly are, not just Black folk, but humankind in general.
Mhm.
We're going to find out who we truly and our true purpose. If we would stop fighting each other, majority of our issues are self-inflicted, human inflicted. Majority of our disease are self-inflicted. If we was to have this awareness, if we all felt like the human race was a big family, we all seen it that way, all of our disease would be cured just like that. We probably would end up living to 150 years,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
We're going to tap into our ancestors. Not only is it the 5-year-old, the 10-year-old, they're 200-year-old parts in us too, right? When any mother who has multiple kids, she can tell you one kid was different in the womb than the other kid. Which parts were that in that womb, right? And so we are way more powerful than we think we are.
Right.
And I want to create a movement in which not only are we healing our issues, emotional issues, we're bringing our families together, but this model, this IFS, is not only good for helping with trauma, but I have superpowers, like literal, right? Like
I
I
get it.
told you,
Yes.
that 15-year-old Paul, when he came from 1996 to 2020, it was 2021, he time traveled. He didn't realize that things have changed. So he remembered what it used to be,
Right.
right? He was able to see things. I'm able to go in certain spaces that I couldn't go in before. My mom is here with me. Like I had a, and this is, I didn't speak about this, but I had a psychedelic journey, right? So we didn't even talk about psychedelic journeys. We didn't talk about cannabis assisted therapy and all that, but it's levels, right? And so
Right.
I
And
had
maybe
a
you'll
psych,
come back. You could come back
yeah,
and
yeah, I'll come back and talk about that. But once I had a psychedelic journey, and it was the most profound. I had several before that, but the one that I had a couple years ago was the most profound one. And the whole journey, I was under for 6 hours. The whole journey, I had an eye mask on, right? I was in like laying down, I had a music playing in my ears, and I was recording myself speak. So that at the facility that I was at, that was how they want to do. It was a beautiful facility out in Tennessee. And my whole session was about family. I was speaking to family, and I was speaking to my family members who aren't here, and I was thanking them. Like, if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be me. If it wasn't for the experience I went through life, I wouldn't be here. So when I'm succeeding in life, I'm bringing my family with me because y'all are part of me, right? And so those that are here, those that aren't here. And so when I came out of that journey, 2 months after that, I was doing a session. So my clients are mostly white men, right? One of my guys, he's a motorcycle mechanic. So he's like, bald head, tattoos all over the place. And he came on to the session. He's like, Ty, it's gonna be a whopper. Friend of mine just committed suicide 2 days ago. I was like, damn. So I'm like really going through it. So after the session was over, he was able to unblend from that part. It was a part of him that felt like he didn't do enough for his friend and all that. And I helped him unblend from that part, and then bringing that part that wants to be there for his family still, bringing that part that did these things. And when he brought that part in, it was a sense of, right. And that calmed that part down. I was feel like he wasn't doing enough. So after that session, I heard this voice like, wow, Tyron, you got a big heart for these people. Said Tyron, right? Wow, Tyron, you got a big heart for these people. And I was like, that's my mom's heart. My mom had a big heart for everybody, right? And I was like, I actually sound like my mom just now talking to me. And so I was feeling relaxed, like I was in the journey. So I got my eye mask, put on my playlist. I laid down for 15 minutes, and I started hearing a conversation. I didn't know what I was going to go into. I don't go in with any intention, right? I just go in to see what's going to come up. And I hear this conversation happening between what sound like my mom speaking to my father. And she was bragging to him about me. You see him down there doing his thing. You see, I'm not surprised he's doing that, healing the world. I'm not surprised. I knew he was going to do that. And I was like, that sounds like my mom. That's my mom. Tears coming. And then when I had the tears, laughter. I was laughing because whatever is happening got me in tears, right? And this happened 3 or 4 times in a matter of 15 minutes of this conversation. And when I came out of it, I journal everything I do. I journal. So my mission is in these journals, right? So at some point, these journals are gonna be worth money because my handwriting is very neat, right? And so I went and I started journaling about what I was hearing. And then I'm journaling, and then I pick my head up like, a part of me is my mom. My mom. A part of me is my mom. And then I heard, finally, how could I leave you? I'm always going to be a part. I've been trying to get your attention for so long. Tears. And ever since then, my mom has been here. When I want to call her in, I can say, Mom, what you think about this? And her essence, how she felt, how she think, how she sound will come behind my eyes. And I would see it from her perspective. And then she would help me out, right? Oh, you should die. She would tell me, like, Tyron, you were so good at those games. Your grandfather didn't like you playing those games because he didn't want you going to the arcade because he would thought the drug dealers are in there and there'll be a shootout or something. But when I see you play those games, I'll see your mind working in a different way. So anytime you have a problem, look at it like a game. And then that right there will make clicks. And oh, just do like that. Bam, then I was shocked. So I could blend with a part and see the world from a different view, right? That's a superpower. I could switch perspective anytime I want. That's a superpower that most people, they get stuck in their perspective, right? They stuck how they see it. And that's what causes a clash. That's a superpower, right? And so I always say this to people, I'm not special. If I can do it, so can you. And I'm on a mission to teach you. And the more and more people that I teach, my clients, once I help them become self-led, I just had one of my clients is in the Jewish community, lives in Marine Park area, the wealthy Jewish neighborhood. I have one of my clients, he referred me from another Jewish client that I had. That's the first in-person in-house session I did that wasn't my family member, right? And so I'm in his home, Jewish man, doing his session, tears, and when he opens his eyes, he's like, wow, you are a prodigy, like they say, right? And I told him, he's like, I told him, he was like, how do you learn this? I want to help people with this. I'm like, every client that I help, they eventually want to help me do this work. The more and more that I heal people, when you become self-led, self wants to heal the world. Right. So it's not going to be me by myself. It's going every time I heal someone, they become a healer to their people, to their group. So I told him, I was like, there's no coincidence I'm in your house right now, brother. I'm a black man, you're a Jewish man, but we're all family. We're all family. I'm gonna bring this awareness to all of you. Like, can you work with my kids? I'm like, brother, you say something about kids. Yes, yes, I'll help your kids. Man, do I love me some kids? Because that allows me to let those kids parts out of me, right? Right. So I'm gonna bridge the old folks to the younger folks, to the middle, to in between. We have a generation that's changing. I know you're dealing with your mom now. There's a lot of talks about this wealth transfer between the baby boomers, and I have a bunch of R2 boomers, right? The baby boomers to millennials. But my whole thing is, let's not let them leave here without getting their wisdom too. They
That's
got
right.
a lot of wisdom that we need. We need to create a movement around getting their wisdom. I recorded sessions of my grandfather. That's why I could do his voice. I got sessions of him. I'm going to recreate him in my movies, my story. When you listen, you're going to see I made it on purpose so it can sound like a movie production, right? Because I'm going to eventually recreate it so you can really be born in my situation. And I'm not the only one that has a story. We all have stories that's connected to different places in this world. And if we all did what I'm doing, the world will be healed in 10 or 15 years.
I'm so glad that you're convinced of that. I'm so glad that you out here doing your part, because we are in a toxic place, especially now. And this constant cycle of damage and trauma, and mental illness, we have to recognize that we have to do something about mental healthiness, and you're right. Each one of us plays a role, healthy or unhealthy. Each and every individual plays a role in moving this needle forward, right? And right now, it is a heal the world, right? You remember Michael Jackson song, "We Are the World,"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and it's somewhat of a cry right now,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
If we go back to the words of that song, there are people dying, there are people crying,
Mm-hmm,
and it's unfortunately that, right now that our community, meaning our Black community, is so much in a turmoil that we can't see that there's other communities that are being affected in very much the same way. And if we just listen to the stories, if we just listen to one another's story, we would just recognize that we have more alike than we
mm-hmm,
have differences.
yeah.
And that's
And
because we're having a human experience.
right, we're a family, right? The human race is a family, and that's why I say I'm tapped in. Anybody that's interacting with me, like when people start interacting with me, like the Jewish community interact with me, I think that I have my ancestors wherever they are, right? They're like, hey, you need to meet Ty. Go have your people meet Ty. He gonna help. They're making arrangements so that they can connect people. If you
I
listen
get
to my voice right now, your ancestors probably said, listen all the way to the end of this thing.
you.
So, and get in touch
That's
with
right.
Ty.
That's
He's
right.
going to
Listen
bring,
to
there's
that.
no coincidences that we're doing this, right? And like I said, I'm tapped in. And I was given this gift, right? And I'm going to do right by this gift. I'm not keeping it to myself. I purposely want
Do
to
it
give it to
well.
you, and I'm going to make it accessible. I'm not going to tell you read a book, read my book. No, if you're not going to read the book, I'll make it more accessible for you. If you're not going to listen to the audio, I'll turn it into a cartoon. Whatever it takes to get this awareness out there, we need to have this awareness. Just like we all know math, 1 + 1 is 2. No matter what your language is, no matter what your skin color is, 1 + 1 is 2. We need to have this inner awareness so we can look at humans as family. And then right there, we won't fight anymore. We were like, why do we have missiles? Why do we manufacture missiles? Who is that for if we all are family? But the
Right.
first family we gotta help is that internal family.
Before we jump off, is there anything else that we could leave on that note, but is there anything that you want to share with your audience? How can people get in contact with you if they want to get in contact with you, although I'm going to put all your information in the caption, but how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so they can get in contact with me through my email, ty@tycutner.com. LinkedIn, that's the only really platform that I'm on. I have a Instagram account, but I don't really post anything on it. I'm part of me is like kind of anti social media.
Okay.
So I like to do things old school way. You know what I mean? I like shaking hands, looking people in the eyes. You know, I like to
You
write
do have
with
a
paper.
website though. I want you to
I have a
share.
website. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have the World Chess Academy. So if any schools who want to get in contact with me regarding the program, the World Chess Academy is the website for that. Just click the link on there, give me information. You can also check out the book, the audio book. I give that away for free. So you just press play on the site and they'll play. But if you want to get in touch with me, click that. I do introduction to IFS calls around once a month. I just do like a Zoom call. We have about 60, 70 people on a call where I go into these IFS tools and you can
And
speak
that's
with
a
me.
Zoom link?
Yeah, so once you get in touch with me, get on my mailing list. Go to my website, any website, and say, I want to get information from you, Ty. And then I like to do stuff to bring it to the awareness. So we have that. I'm also going to be speaking on May 18th at the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture, which is in like, I think that's Park Slope on 4th Avenue, 265 4th Avenue. Um, and yeah, and I'm also interested in really connected with the organizations here locally in New York. So if you have any, whether it's schools, I'm doing work with the family enrichment centers, right? Like I want to turn the schools and these family enrichment centers into family healing hubs.
Right. You did tell me that you talked to Natasha not too long
Right,
ago.
Natasha, right,
My girl,
exactly.
that's my girl. That's my girl.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out Tasha,
All right.
the yard, the
The
yard,
yacht,
the yard.
exactly. I went to their grand opening. I spoke to Bernard yesterday.
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we working, we building together. And like my goal is to really create a network in
Right.
which we're able to heal families. And then as I'm creating this network, I have a network, like a digital network where you can watch, like we have all this technology, but we haven't created universal ways of solving, common human problems and conflicts. Right. Humans have been getting angry at each other as long as we've been humans. We haven't created anything to solve that problem, but yet we got climate control and Wi-Fi and satellites in space. Right. Why we haven't created social technology to solve our problems with each other? That's what I'm creating. I'm on that mission. And if you're listening to me, you're going to be helping me with your stories. And what I want people to do, just walk towards me. Listen to the book, right? Look at a video, walk towards me. And then as you walk towards me, you'll start seeing another way of healing. And I want you to reach out to me. I'm not just trained in this model, I'm a prodigy at it, right? And I really want to give it to my people, no matter your color, but you know what people I'm really talking about. Or I love all people, but my Black people, that's who I really love, my family.
And we need it. And we need it, right? We need
Yes,
to be healed. We need to look at one another and recognize one another in a human sense.
right.
Right. And I think that this is one of the reasons why gun violence is so rampant in our community is because we kind of got disassociated from the humanistic roles that we play in one another's life. So, but that's another story for another time. I could go on and talk about gun violence for hours. So, and we took up a lot of time, but I loved having you here and we will bring you back, Ty. And, we are going to be doing work together because things are intentional and we talk about that after we come off. But thank you for giving me this opportunity of speaking you on Trendsetters Talk. You guys, Ty Cutner, thank you
Thank
so
you so
much, Ty.
much. Mm.
All right, tell Trendsetters we out.
We out, trendsetters.
Bye, you guys.